As an oncology chaplain, sometimes when I'm getting acquainted with a patient for the first time, I will often ask, tell me, what's a perfect day look like for you? When you don't have to work, you were feeling pretty good before you got sick, what would that day be for you? My intention is to find out in a quick and easy way what floats their boat, where they find their juice in life, where is it that they find meaning? And it can often be a very revealing answer. Although sometimes I do admit I sit in judgment when someone fumbles for an answer, like, I don't know, watching TV, I guess. Carl, newly diagnosed with lung cancer, took no time at all to respond. Oh, watching my son play soccer and taking him out for an ice cream. That answer reveals so much, doesn't it? A few years ago, I had a patient, Casey, who gave me a little holiday gift. It was a teeny spool of thread wrapped up in a poem written by William Stafford. The poem is called The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It runs among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die. You suffer and grow old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Such a wonderfully concise summation, isn't it? And what a beautiful gift. Carl had no trouble at all identifying his thread. Would you? What would yours be? The older I get, I find myself wondering if it's really as simple and as clean as all that. Is that thread really unchanging? Is it really unbreakable? I thought I had a good grip on it, but then divorce happened, or cancer, or bankruptcy, or Parkinson's disease, or this career that seemed to define my life vanished. Do I have to find a new thread now? Or do I redefine the old one? Or is it enough to have faith in the idea that the damn thread exists in the first place? If it does exist, and I like to believe that it does, I find it can be an arduous journey downward of distillation to identify it. A journey that can take years, if not decades. That kind of spiritual distillation, if you will, is a challenge that I find confronts so many cancer patients. If I can no longer be, do, or have what I once was, who would I even be then? Do I even exist? If I'm no longer the super mom who never misses a soccer game or a birthday party, am I even still the mom? And yet, while we do have a good grip on the thread, it can serve as a kind of guy wire, stabilizing us in stormy times. But I'm also wondering if it might be conceptualized, not just as a thread to run through our life or beneath our life, but what about a thread to wrap around our life, to hold it together, to give it some coherence, to help us find a place for all the disparate pieces of our puzzle, a puzzle that might have to be arranged and rearranged time and again because life just demands it. But any way you cut it, it's still an arduous journey down to identify it. My sister Terry was a pioneer in women's surfing in the 60s and 70s, competing at the national level. She was even co-director and co-producer of the first professional women's surfing championship in 1975, the Hang Ten Invitational in Malibu. She's 76 now. She still loves to surf. But as you might imagine, it grieves her that she can't do all the things she once could, or certainly not as easily. She told me that not long ago she bumped into an old surfing chum from back in the day at the beach. And they were bemoaning this particular state of affairs. And he said, Terry, you know what I came to realize? It was always just about getting wet. I love that. I thought it was about thrills. I thought it was about big waves. I thought it was about competition and winning. No, it was really just about getting wet. As an old former professional dancer, I confront the very same challenge every Saturday in dance class. coming face to face with the limitations of a body that won't do what it once did. It's not easy. But a few years ago, I came to a different relationship with those limitations that has everything to do with essence, that distillation. I have never seen a dance performance that socked me in the gut with more power, more intensity than Donna McKechnie in the original Broadway production of A Chorus Line at the Shubert Theater in New York City, 1976. That was some kind of heady experience for this 21-year-old aspiring professional dancer from Los Angeles on his first trip to New York City. Kind of transcendent, actually. Well, a number of years ago, Donna performed at an AIDS benefit in Los Angeles. She was maybe in her 60s at the time. She'd put on quite a bit of weight. She wore a big flowing caftan-like dress, and she offered a highly truncated version of her tour de force from A Chorus Line, The Music in the Mirror. Oh, there were echoes of the original choreography, remnants here and there, an arm gesture, the flick of a head, hitting a line. I sat in my seat and just sobbed. Not out of sadness for what was lost or what was missing, but crying at the unmistakable beauty of essence, of her essence, an essence that might have even been camouflaged once upon a time by her youth and agility. This was the real thing. In some ways, it was a more potent performance than had she been soaring across that stage at the Shubert in front of that bank of mirrors in that red dress. I'd been told that Keith had been a brilliant architect, but when I met him months after his glioblastoma diagnosis, that brain tumor had robbed him of all that brilliance. It was nearly impossible for him to compose a coherent sentence. And yet he loved to spend time with me, so every week we met for an hour. It was hard to have a conversation, but there was one sentence Keith used quite easily and readily. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As his whole being had been refined and distilled down to this sense of apology for not being who he once was. I finally had to say, Keith, no more apology. One rule in here. No. We can spend this hour any way you like. We can sit and meditate. We can take hands and just look at each other. We can cry. We can pray. We can try to talk. But no, I'm sorry. This has to be one place where you don't feel like you have to apologize for letting anybody down, certainly not me. I never knew Keith in the context of his brilliance, and yet I kind of fell in love with the guy, with the sweetness of his smile, his gentle spirit, his tender heart, distillation. While it can indeed be a challenging journey to identify that thread, finding a way for it to wrap around our story, to give it that coherence, is another matter altogether, particularly when we've endured some kind of loss or tragedy. Such losses often require that we let go of so much, most particularly our expectations of how we thought life should be, could be, wanted it to be, hoped it would be, thought it would be. Sometimes we even have to let go of hope altogether. At least hope that things will get better. In some situations, they won't get better. Guaranteed to get worse. Is it still possible to find a way to wrap that thread around my story, to hold it together? At least enough to take the next steps that life demands of me. A year ago, last October, I got to take a wonderful solo journey to Turkey. And there, I got a vivid reminder of something I've long known to be true. There's the thing, and there's our experience of the thing. And they're not the same thing. Ask anyone, and they will tell you that one of the primo sights to see in all of Turkey is the Blue Mosque. But on that particular Sunday morning, after waiting in an impossibly long line, going through security, navigating the hordes of people inside, my experience of the place did not begin to match the majesty, the grandeur of the architecture. By contrast, I had a far more meaningful, potent, even tearful experience in a far more modest 13th century wooden mosque called Eşrefoglu in a teeny village called Beyşehir. The experience is distinct from the thing itself. For over 25 years, I ran a nonprofit organization called GLIDE, Gays and Lesbians Initiating Dialogue for Equality. And in those 25 plus years, I trained hundreds of speakers, and each speaker had to craft their own coming out story. I would always encourage them to share your experience, not your story. Your story is just the facts. I came out to my mom when I was 16. The experience, on the other hand, might sound like, for me, coming out to my mom was the big one because I stood the most to lose there. If my mom rejected me, I was in trouble. I was so scared. Following that through line of our experience of our life story might, in fact, lead us to our thread, no matter how we define it or interpret it. And that's the thing, it's always up to us, and it's always up for reinterpretation. Esther was a brilliant woman, this luminous spirit, a scholar, an art historian, a professor, a curator. I met her for the first time on her first day of chemotherapy for ovarian cancer. And after we visited, I was ready then and there to quit my job just so I could go back to school and study German Expressionism under Esther. Her passion was that infectious. Well, after decades of research and scholarship, she was offered the chance of a lifetime, a dream come true for her. She was invited to curate a major retrospective of the German Expressionist master painter Max Beckmann at a world-class museum. This was something Esther had dreamt of. But these things need to be planned a few years in advance. Could she make that commitment, given her diagnosis, given her treatment plan? She wrestled with questions, as you might imagine. But Michael, maybe I need to make the commitment. Maybe that's just the affirmation my body, my spirit would need to heal. What do you think? Sadly, her disease progressed and she needed to decline the invitation. As we wandered through the rubble of her loss, her disappointment, we looked at what was the essence of what had been lost, and had it really been lost? Was the essence of this experience, this world-class museum, was it this recognition? Was it even about the art itself? Or was it about Esther's passion and her capacity to inspire, as she had done countless students, myself? One graduate student even changed her whole fieldwork dissertation course of study after one class with Esther. That's something that can't be lost. What if that passion, that capacity to inspire, to give breath to, was her version of getting wet? What if that was the thread that could wrap around her whole life, hold it together, give it some coherence, even as tragic as the ending was? A few years ago, I came upon an essay in the Atlantic in which the essayist drew a distinction between obituary virtues and eulogy virtues. Obituaries, when you think about it, often read like a resume. Just the facts. He was born here, went to school there, married this person, had these kids, worked here, loved to play golf, and then he died. A eulogy, on the other hand, often reveals a much more nuanced, multidimensional version of who a person was. He was a guy who always made me laugh. He was the one who would show up without being asked to help me move or to paint my living room. What do you suppose it would look like if we recalibrated our lives to focus on eulogy virtues rather than obituary virtues? Through one lens, the obituary might be the story of our lives, just the facts. The eulogy might be our response to the story. How did we interpret that story and translate it as a way of engaging and connecting with life around us? In a way, pursuing the eulogy virtues through our lives not only might lead us to our thread, but for our way to wrap that thread around our story and hold it together. You know how some people, myself included, God knows, will post pictures on social media, Facebook, what have you, of a beloved dog or cat asking for prayers and good thoughts while their beloved family friend faces some life crisis. And your heart breaks for them, and then in a week or two, there's another picture as our friend shares their inconsolable grief over having to have to say goodbye to their beloved family member. You kind of die a little bit for them. You remember when it was your time at that particular rodeo, or you live in dread of what's coming down the pike for you and your furry friend. And then in a few weeks, a month or two, there's another picture, or 12, of the most adorable little kitten or puppy. Meet Oscar, everybody. I'm so in love. Have you ever seen anything so cute in your whole life? I sometimes wonder if the specificity of that puppy or kitten matters at all. What matters is this deeper longing, this love that needs to be given away. And this is a little guy who showed up, so we're just going to love each other forever, and that's that. I don't mean to denigrate the uniqueness of any of our furry family members, God knows. But this love, this bigger love, I think is bigger than our love for our old dog or cats, bigger than our love for this beautiful kitten or puppy, bigger than all of us. That bigger love might be the very thing that's at the end of all of our threads. The sweet, uncomplicated, uncompromising love I felt from my grandmother, Anne, certainly points me in the direction of my life, of my thread, if it isn't the thread itself. She's been dead for 35 years, and yet it's her voice I hear in my head, I carry in my heart. She had a hard life. Grew up in a large, very poor Italian Catholic family, 10 siblings, beaten regularly by her father. After one such beating in which he broke a shovel across her back, she'd had enough. And that night she ran away into the arms of the young man who would be my grandfather for no other reason than he was there. If that shovel hadn't broken, I may not be here. She was 15 years old. Sadly, that marriage didn't last too long, but it did bring 3 people into the world. But to my grandmother's credit, and of women in her generation, undaunted, she never stopped looking for love. And she gave it away in abundance to her kids, to her grandkids, to her great-grandkids, to her friends. My mom and I used to reminisce about her, and we would chuckle how when you'd tell Grandma a story that was sad, something, a loss you had endured, she'd listen so carefully, and the most she would sometimes say is, well, keep your chin up, dearie. Wasn't nearly as flip as it sounds. It actually was said with so much love and compassion, and actually reflected a kind of hard-won wisdom that she would have been hard-pressed to articulate. But a wisdom that would say, I know there's nothing I can do or say to make this any better, so I'm not going to insult you by thinking there is and saying it. I'm here, and I just want you to know I love you so much. I don't want you to hurt. I want you to be happy. So the best I got is, keep your chin up, dearie. Sometimes a patient will ask me for a blessing, a prayer at the end of a visit. I will often include this. May we keep our hearts and eyes open to recognize blessings that we don't know we're looking for. May that be true. I don't know, though. But in the meantime, keep your chins up, dearie. So be it.